Hello, welcome to another episode of Decentralounge, brought to you by Global Stake, your institutional, truly decentralized, self-owned and managed SOC 2 Type 2 compliant bare metal staking service provider. Today, we're excited to host Shuyao Kong, aka Brother Bing, one of the co-founders of MegaETH. She worked for many years at Consensus before becoming a co-founder for MegaETH and is a prolific writer who began a column for Decrypt, which eventually transformed into her Substack that contains quote-unquote words that make you mega bullish on crypto. She is joined today by 0xBreadGuy, aka Bread, the head of community and growth for the MegaETH ecosystem. He is widely known for among Web3 denizens for his insightful, data-driven takes on all manner of Web3 topics, with a particular forte in more technical aspects. MegaETH aims to be the world's first real-time blockchain that provides end users with a similar user experience to today's Web2 applications in terms of responsiveness. Join us as we delve into the first blockchain ecosystem that tries to, quote-unquote, uplift everyone everywhere. Bing, Bread, thanks for joining us today. Why don't we start off a little bit about just telling the audience a little bit more about your respective backgrounds and what brought each of you to the Web3 space?
Thank you so much, Ryan, Jordan. And by the way, you have the perfect podcast voice. It's legit, it's substantial, extremely clear, and you have the rhythm tuned extremely well. So, wow.
He's in education. It comes from a lot of experience.
I was a 20-year high school teacher, yes.
Wow, what a treat. Thank you for having me. So my name is Brother Bing. As Ryan mentioned, I spent many years at Consensus. But what really got me into crypto was actually multiple years of living in Middle East and Africa, especially 2 years in Nigeria, where I've personally experienced a lot of overnight deflation, where I just lose a lot of money, or all of a sudden you can't afford rice because the government put some stupid policy to ban the import of rice. And all of that gave me a worldview where I realized that poverty is deeply man-made. And I believe that crypto does provide this alternative, open, fair, permissionless rail for people to move money easily, to bring their identity on-chain easily. And just in general, society can't really move forward without crypto. So that's what kind of drove me to join Consensus back in 2017 during the ICO boom. Then kind of stay for many years, have seen the ups and downs of many products. And I'm pretty sure everybody here has used MetaMask at some point. You probably see trace of me here and there. Then earlier this year, I decided to join MegaETH as a co-founder because I believe that this is the most scalable, most unique and elegant solution to build any EVM blockchain.
How about you, Brad?
Yeah, my story is not as tailored to the Web3 space. Actually, my background is just I went to school for computer science, and actually, Bing's probably gonna learn a little bit about me here. So I went to school for computer science. I was actually in healthcare for a long time, believe it or not, and it was doing integrations through basically the native systems of healthcare systems, and then integrating with all the disparate systems interconnected throughout the hospitals, whatever. That was my career for a long time. And I actually just got nerd sniped by crypto back in 2017, to be honest. Yeah. So I was here around technical people. Crypto Kitties pops up during a go live, like a bunch of crazy stuff. And you're just like, all right, what the hell is this thing? What's going on? And my role in the my previous career was actually interfacing between really technical staff and then like clinicians, right? And there's basically no technical founding there on the clinician side, right? So my day to day for 10 years was explaining technical concepts to non-technical people. So I found myself really enjoying that, like trying to educate, trying to visualize, do stuff like that. So I kind of just brought that over to the Web3 space. I had technical friends. I would be really involved with the culture side of crypto. That's why, you're seeing me tweet a little bit more. And I found my edge was continuing to educate because I could take on technical concepts of blockchain. I like explaining it to people that wanted to learn, but maybe didn't know how to learn. Like they appealed to the visual side of stuff. And I kind of like drawing. So I like to draw. That's how I learn stuff. And it forces me to learn. So I did that for I guess 5 years ish now. Really got to started putting out a lot of work in the last year or so. And I got nerd sniped by MegaETH whenever they came to market. They announced a raise. I started doing some of the same like technical stuff for them, just little explainers and talking like visualizations of what they're doing versus the current landscape and kind of how those will shift. I did a cold DM to Brother Bing here and just said like, hey, I want to contribute because like I was a contractor and my contract ended last year or at end of November the previous year, and I was like, all right, I'm finally going to make the jump to Web3 because I was doing 1 foot in, 1 foot out for a long time, as most people do. And I was like, I just leaped and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to do stuff, which meant I had to kind of put my thoughts and feelings out there to like say, hey, I'm trying to make a presence here. I'd like to contribute. I'd like to grow, because if you don't put your intentions out there, it's hard for people to know what your intentions even are. So I did that with Bing, and she turned me down actually. Initially, she's just like, yeah, thank you, but like you join the Discord, contribute. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I don't have time for Discord grinding, so like I'll just continue to do my stuff. And I just continued to work and continue to talk about MegaETH because, again, at Nerds Night, I enjoyed it. I aligned with what their vision was. And then they came back around like, you know what, like what you're doing is what we need on that side. My arena, quote unquote, would be crypto Twitter, right? So presence out there, mindshare, all that stuff is starting to show up in like Kaido now. So she reached back out and she's like, look, we want this element brought into our team. So she offered me a position on the core team. So now I'm helping expand that CT mindshare for the project.
That's amazing. What a great story. And especially you rejecting him, Bing. Well, listen, because before we get too deep into what MegaETH is, because it's super fascinating, I was just going through all the documentation again last night to kind of really get into the weeds, and there's such an interesting, and I know that they're not here, the other two co-founders, but they have such a complementary background for building what you guys are trying to achieve with MegaETH. So maybe just a quick overview about each of them and how them together has kind of spawned this idea that you guys are now building.
Yeah, so funny story. I got introduced to Yilong, who is the original brain behind MegaETH, via an old consensus friend. So he said, oh, there is this Stanford PhD graduate who's working on a product called Mega Rollup. You should really chat with him. I thought, what the hell is this ICO scam? Why would anyone name themselves Mega Rollup, right? It's just like the ticker is Mega, that type of thing. And I also have a thing against Professor Coin. I was like, okay, a PhD student, Mega Rollup, and not my cup of tea. But thank God my friend insisted. I was like, okay, maybe he's really smart. So I talked to Yilong, right? So here's the persona of Yilong. Yilong never worked in crypto, right? So he specialized in data center compute, which means he studies how to make data center computers like so fast in a nanosecond measurement, not even in millisecond or like second, right? And he saw someone's blog post about EVM scaling, and he read it. He's like, yo, these crypto people, they're really not thinking hard enough. Like, the problem is not all the other ZK stuff, data availability. The problem is the sequencer. Oh, by the way, sequencer is kind of my bread and butter. So he spent 6 months kind of measuring the bottleneck of EVM blockchain and realized that it was really the Markov-Patricia tree. That was the problem. So that kind of laid the foundation of the core of what MegaETH's technology design is. So that's Yilong. Where does Lei come in? So Lei specialized in distributed system, aka blockchain. Well, he graduated from MIT AI Labs. And he's actually pretty well known in the research space because there aren't that many people who study blockchain, nor are there many people who study actual consensus. And Lei has been collaborating with Shuyao from EigenLayer and David Xie from Babylon for the last 5 years. So our team actually went to Lei's defense, and it turned out that his thesis had nothing to do with AI, even though he worked in an AI labs. It was like all crypto stuff. It was fascinating. And Lei co-authored the EigenDA paper, actually. So what Lei came in was, Yilong designed everything about the sequencer, but the sequencer is powerless by itself. It's just a database. A sequencer is powerful when you plug in to an overall EVM architecture. And Lei's specialty is blockchain and distributed system. So they're extremely complementary together when put their knowledge together. And this was really funny when we had our own team offsite. Lei would talk about like optimistic rollup, ZK rollup, consensus, and blah, blah, blah. And you realize like Yilong actually did not understand. But then Yilong would talk about like the sequencer, and Lei would be like, oh, can you explain me more over there? So it's really beautiful that both of them are extremely technical, but extremely complementary. And obviously myself, right, I can't write one line of code. I would look at codes, I would be like, looks great. Okay, when testnet. So these are my two technical co-founders.
That's amazing. Well, let's shift a little bit to the vision of MegaETH. Maybe Brett, you could, because I know you're very technical and you do such a great job of breaking down these explainers in terms of, one of the big things that we see a headline when it comes to MegaETH is just having block time that is, super, super fast, under a split, a second, and having that 100,000, TPS in terms of just how quickly things, because you're looking for that same kind of UI UX that any average person would get in a Web 2 application where it's just instantly responsive. And in the paper, the documents talk about how much, like when we think about things that are done in a data center, for instance, as Bing was talking about, happens in nanoseconds, whereas things on the blockchain sometimes take, in the case of Ethereum L1, like 12-second block time. So just how is MegaETH going to kind of get to that level of speed, and what is it doing to actually enable all that?
That's actually, so, well, before I dive into that, first thing I want to say about your previous comment was, yeah, like I love your trajectory on this stuff was the exact same as mine, where you see the thing, it's kind of scammy, like, okay, MegaETH, kind of whatever. Then you see the actual founders behind it and you're like, oh, like the claims make sense, right? There's credibility there based on all the stuff that they've done. So it's the exact same thing that I went through. But now I love MegaETH. I love like the name, it's kind of lean into it. But what you just talked about with the reduction of like latency, and like that's something that we've really honed in on recently. We actually just wrote a post about it, right? So you're right. Like the traditional times that you see today, right? If you talk about just block times, we'll stick to EVM just to keep it comparable. You mentioned Ethereum has 12-second block times. You look at fast EVM chains today, right? You have Base, it's 2 seconds. You have Monad trying to come out with 1 second. The reason they have these block times, right? That's the built up time that is required for consensus to form amongst nodes to actually propagate this stuff out, right? So you have your mempool, throw it in there. People have to build these blocks. They have 12 seconds to agree on the block, then send the block out, propagate it, do all this stuff, right? So that's why these times have to be super long, because you have to build in time for these blocks to be built and then propagated out and agreed upon by all these distributed nodes. Well, one of the superpowers of MegaETH, and because it's in the Ethereum stack, right, so as an L2, is you can offload consensus entirely, right? So the thing that was there to have these arbitrarily long block times is now no longer required, and you can do that while preserving some of the properties that you get through consensus because it's an L2, right? So that's forced inclusion, that's the escape hatch to get stuff to the L1, all of that stuff. So if you're an L2, right, you have this ability to say, okay, we're not going to do consensus anymore. Some chains, right, like you'll see some strategies out there like, Base, Optimism, Arbitrum, they're all talking about decentralizing the sequencer that we were referring to earlier. And if you decentralize it, right, decentralization implies that you're going to reintroduce consensus, right? Because now everyone has to agree on something, which means you're reintroducing that time lag, that block time. So you're talking about the Web 2 standards of like instantaneous stuff, what you actually think feels natural, right? As a user, what you're used to in today's age. We actually, again, we did a post on it recently. The thresholds for that are about 100 milliseconds is when something is perceived as instantaneous to a person. About 1 second is where you lose your train of thought, like your flow is now gone. And at 10 seconds, you've lost attention entirely, right? And this was in a paper that was back in 1993. It's widely cited for like consumer engineering, I think is what it was called. Anyways, so because we can remove consensus, that means this thing that was taking up, if you're talking 2 second block times, again, that's using Base as an example, that takes up 95% of the time lag of you submit a transaction, and then it actually gets turned into a block, it gets propagated out throughout the ecosystem, and then you can like see it reflected in the app, right? Like you place an order, it's not going to show up on the order book until it goes through that entire process, because the applications that you're interacting with have to wait for that whole process. That's the feedback loop of a user. It's really long for Web 2 or Web 3. So again, because we can offload consensus, now the thing that takes up 95 or did take up 95% of that time lag, we can shrink it as small as we want. That's the one thing we can control, right? We can shrink that block time. We can't control like the latency between like you submitting a transaction and going to the data center, then go into the node then come back to you. Like the distances we can't control. What we can control is how long it sits in our hands and we process it and allow everyone else to adjust it and then like give it back to everyone. So because, we're in L2, because we don't need consensus, that's just performance engineering. How short can we make those block times and make it accurate and consistent? P999, which means like 99.9% of the time, it's consistent throughout the ecosystem. And that's where, like you just mentioned, Yilong, that's what he specializes in, right? Creating these systems that can do this thing in a very high performant way and then spit it out to the ecosystem and let everyone deal with their stuff. Now there comes with some other stuff with that, but like that's what we're focusing on. We can offload consensus, which means we can shrink that block time, and we're shrinking it as much as we possibly can. We're at 10 milliseconds is the target now. We're aiming for under 1 millisecond. So just basically have a stream of data shooting out of our sequencer that the entire ecosystem can keep up with, and then like create these really responsive, really real-time apps where other places, the best they can possibly hope for if they have consensus is to hope that we don't break your flow of thought, where we want it to make it feel instantaneous. Like that's the difference.
That's insane. For clarity, if we could take a step back, some of our listeners are family offices or people that are just like recently into crypto and really only see this as like an investment vehicle. So when you guys talk about things like removing consensus, doing 100,000 transactions per second, like sometimes people will sit back and go, why is that necessary? If I'm moving $1 billion of an asset and it's going to take me less than a minute to move it, why do I care about this blockchain versus your layer 2? Can you kind of maybe give examples of certain use cases where MegaETH is going to be wildly useful for certain industries with certain applications versus somebody who just sees this as I'm sending money to a friend?
Yeah, I think first of all, I doubt anyone would prefer 1 minute transaction over 1 second transaction. I think universally we all want to hit the send button, and whether it's 1 cent or $1 billion, it's in your account. Inshallah, I have $1 billion, but I don't. I'll send you a fake token on testnet. So I think, whether you're a family office, your technology is an operator, I think the reason we're all here because we admire technology. And as an industry for crypto to move forward, the blockchain must enhance. The blockchain must move forward. So I don't think anyone would complain a blockchain of being too fast. But now you do pose a really interesting question was, okay, there are so many empty block space in all the layer 2s, alternative layer 1, like who's gonna fill this up, right? And I think there are like a few explanations, and then I'll go into what type of use cases that we are excited to work with. I think the first explanation, which I learned deeply from working at Consensus, was I was responsible for launching Linear, which was our ZK EVM. I was super excited because back in the day, I thought, oh my God, ZK technology is going to change the world. Right? It's going to solve hunger, poverty, and any disease. Had high hope. But then, as many of you guys would know, zero-knowledge technology doesn't improve performance. Right? It does increase security. And then from launching Linear, what I realized was that crypto developers have a habit of cheating the chain. What do I mean by cheating the chain is everyone is used to not putting anything on chain. We're using the excuse of the chain is not performant enough. So we're in this like a negative bad loops of you don't put things on chain, and then therefore you just assume there's no need to have better blockchain. So for example, you would have all the games, right? Like they just put their NFT on the chain and it just makes you wonder, first off, the game is not even fun. Second of all, what's the crypto use case over there? And then even with DeFi, everyone thought, okay, DeFi is so mature, like there's no innovation. I dare to say, compared to like traditional finance, the speed and execution and the current DeFi, we're actually at baby step. So I think there is a lot of room to go in to have a much faster, very differentiated blockchain, right? Which is what we call ourselves a real-time blockchain because of the latency. So now I can go on and talk about the use cases. We are really excited to bring use cases that are only possible on MegaETH. What do I mean by that? If you're forking a Uni v3 or if you're doing some random metaverse game, I actually would tell you, please go work with another ecosystem. You can probably get some grants. So please don't come to me. And I'm not being very unfriendly. What I'm trying to contribute to the industry is, hey, we have this incredible piece of technology. Let's really try to push the chain forward. Let's really push the apps forward. So we designed this builders program called Mega Mafia. These are about 18 teams. Everyone is building something that's 0 to 1 and fully on chain. And I give you some example, right? So for example, the basic stuff like DeFi. Our spot DEX is a combination of AMM and club. AMM for long tail asset, club for your major asset. But even more beautifully, because we have a rotational centralized sequencer, you can co-locate your oracle with our sequencer. What does that mean? You massively unlock capital efficiency. You can actually run arbitrages. Market makers can do a lot of strategies that they can never do on any other chain before, right? So this is the DeFi 0 to 1 unlock. We have fully on-chain perp dexes. We have a stable coin that actually the yield come from the arbitrages. This is really democratizing arbitrage for the first time. And you can't do it anywhere else because no one else had the latency that MegaETH does. And then, so other than DeFi, our second thesis was working with applications that provide emotional value to end users. What do I mean by emotional value? As a millennial, sorry, I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial. If I go to my phone, I love my Instagram, right? Like I like watching people making sandwiches. I like cooking. And I really don't like to use my banking app. I'm pretty sure no one wants to go deal with banking stuff. Like even today I pay my bill, I was like, oh my God, I have to do, otherwise they're gonna cut AC, and I live in Dubai. So the emotional values in crypto are extremely an unexplored territory, right? So we're thinking about a fully on-chain game. So yesterday, one of our Mega Mafia project launch is called Autonomous World Engine, AWE or AWE, conveniently. What they can do is you can plug any, for example, DEX within the game engine. So rather than you're trading DEXs on Pump.fun or Uniswap, the coins are manifested into blocks. And these blocks would fall from the sky. And you as a little person, you would jump and go touch the block. Every time you touch the block, you buy $1 into the coin. Like a massive gamification of an existing crypto native behavior. We have another project. They're building a category-defining DPM project called Portal Network. Allows anyone to get access to free internet anywhere. So again, this is only possible on MegaETH because the moment you have a DPM project, you bootstrap a distributed system with nodes all over the world. Latency becomes really important. You don't want the transaction to hop between different nodes and then there's like a 1 second latency, right? Like that's not how you want to browse the internet. We also have some like really wacky ideas. One of our Mega Mafia project, their goal is to 3D model the entire world on chain. Team came from a drone background. They used to fly drones. And they were also archaeologists. And what they're trying to do is completely change humans' behavior. Before you go to somewhere to travel with your loved ones, you would take a picture, right? You upload on Instagram, TikTok, you send to your family. What if you can just take 20 pictures and the app allow you to automatically generate a 3D model? It changes your behavior because now you tell a completely different story. You have your angle, you have your different perspective, you have the time of the day, the lighting, etc. And more beautifully, you can actually send these drone models, these 3D models, to gaming engines. And that's actually how the current game studio actually render their models. They actually fly drones all over the world. There's a game called Black Wukong, which made sensation this last year. The team came from China and they actually flew drone all over some old Chinese landscape. That's exactly how they render their model. So imagine you render their model and you can send it to a gaming engine, right, to render the 3D real world. So I can go endless, but the idea here is quite simple. Push the boundary of what can be put on chain, max capital efficiency for decentralized finance, max emotional value for things that give people a pleasure, give people happiness. And internally we often joke like, a lot of these wacky bets would fail, right? Like maybe no one wants to 3D model the entire world. But our team think like if we don't try it with such a powerful blockchain, then I think crypto deserves to be a casino.
That's incredible. And I was going to actually ask about Mega Mafia, so I'm glad that you looped that into the answer, because and some of the projects too that you were already talking about, Brother Bang, sound super interesting, because I didn't know about some of these that are being built. Brad, I'm going to kick it to you for a second. You know, I know that there's been a private test net. I think I either saw it in one of your posts on X, or maybe it was in the Mega Forge, where basically somebody was saying like, I can't even keep up with the private test net because it's so fast. But let's talk a little bit about what's coming for the new public test net and how people will get to actually experience MegaETH for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not a whole lot to talk about. And yes, you saw it. So it was a post by, you mentioned the stablecoin earlier. It was by the team that's producing the stablecoin. And yeah, they have access. The Mafia has access to the private testnet. We want to make sure that they're up and ready to go. And we get feedback from them, right? Because we're still in the stage where we can make tweaks that are, you know, attuned to what their needs are. We want to make sure that the chain is built for apps, not the chain is built for the chain's sake, right? So we're taking their feedback and doing that. And yeah, so Q1 is the goal. We have a testnet going. We want to make sure that we iron out some more stuff and refine documentation and stuff, so that people, whenever they do engage, they can really sink their teeth into it. And the target for that is still Q1. We want to make sure that we surprise to the upside, as opposed to give some promises that we can't keep. So that's the window. And then yeah, once it's dropped, we have that chat with you guys in there, and largely builders, right? So we have the Mega Mafia team that's out there building. We have a form on our Twitter page. If you go there, it takes you to a type form, our Google form, and you can submit your actual team and like the project that you're excited about on MegaETH, and we'll loop you into our tech chat and make sure that you guys, that channel specifically has direct access to both the team, the Mafia, because we want to make sure that we don't create a line between everyone, and so they can then get questions from us directly from or from people that are already building on testnet to get ideas. Lei's in there. He's a co-founder, talking about like how people can build up their indexers, because people want to make sure that they're optimized for keeping up with the chain, right? Because we're going to be breaking a lot of stuff with the throughput that we're projecting. So we're trying to get people the insights into that stuff as much as we can ahead of time, to make sure that once this stuff gets ready to go, they really can. And I think the performance angle is honestly where we've nerd sniped the most people on this, is we just say like, look, this thing's going to be performant. Like, we hope you can keep up. And the people go like, bet. Like, we want to keep up. We're the team that can keep up. And that's kind of exciting to have that little arms race back in the Ethereum side, because kind of going back into the previous question, like we're talking about apps and things that we put on chain. I think the big mental switch of like the question of like, oh, why is this different? And what does this unlock for you, like use case wise? I think you could even take that as a retrospective against what's actually out there today. And you see that most of it was built with like a scarcity mindset of like, I can only put so much on chain, being referenced NFTs for an entire game, right? Like they can only feasibly put the NFT on chain. So that's all they're going to put. They keep everything off chain. There's nothing really innovative there. So you see this stuff and you go like, why is this a differentiator? Well, now because we're building a system that's so performant, the latency's down, all this stuff, you can kind of unlock your mind into like a abundance mindset of just like, well, if I didn't have rules, what could I build? Right? Like what could I create on chain? And we're seeing a lot of that creator unlock with a lot of people when we say like, look, just come build, the chain can handle you. Can you handle the chain? And then, you know, from that create some really cool use cases.
Well, Brother Bing, Brad, thank you both so much for being on today. For those of you that are listening, I know various different backgrounds, venture capital, hedge fund, family offices, what have you. You're excited about what you've heard today from MegaETH. I know you're probably starting to think of some people that are in your portfolios that you want to reach out to and get them to start building on the network, on the chain. So Brother Bing, what's the best place that they can direct either themselves or people to come to your project and start to kind of get involved, whether it's Twitter, your actual website, et cetera? What are those specific places that you'd like them to go to?
I think our DMs are always open. We reply to actually everyone. Sometimes I think people love talking to me so much I become their therapist on Twitter. I've seen a few cases so far, and I cannot not reply, so it's weird. Our Discord is a great place as well. But yeah, I think DMing us on Twitter would be great.
Awesome. Well, I'll have all of that stuff linked in the description, so please reach out to them there. Again, thank you both so much for your time today. We're excited to see this project explode, especially some of the answers that you've mentioned today just have me actually reinvigorated, even more excited about the crypto industry than I was before, because my brain has been so focused on just money, 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 that it's cool to see that there's, like you said, the emotional aspect that's getting ready to enter the space. So thank you both for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, gang. Really enjoyed the conversation. And everybody else who's watching, we'll see you on the next episode of the Central Lounge. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for having us.